Neil, we are back in the studio, which means we've survived Gravel Worlds.
We made it. It is over. It is finished. Done. Never, ever, ever doing a double again.
I don't necessarily believe you, but we'll break down our weekend in Lincoln, Nebraska, when we'll be right back with This is Gravel. Welcome back to This is Gravel here on Gravel Guru, episode 708. Neil's in the studio. I'm in the studio. It's Monday after Gravel Worlds, which means we're home from Lincoln, Nebraska. How are you feeling at this moment, Neil?
At this current moment, like I could ride my bike about 50 feet.
In that 50 feet, would you sit on the seat?
No, absolutely not. No.
Well, you know, we're upright though.
Correct. Yeah, I'm awake for right now.
I'm awake. We did survive Gravel Worlds. Congratulations on finishing the double-double.
Glad to be over.
Yeah, how does it feel to be able to check those two boxes?
Sweet relief, man. I mean, I'm not going to lie. When we sat in the studio this time last week, it was the stress of what could go wrong, what could go wrong. You know, stay healthy. Don't accidentally trip on something. Don't bang your knee on something. Don't twist an ankle randomly. Don't eat the wrong food. I mean, just paranoia almost going through my brain leading up to it because I wanted to complete the culmination of these 4 events. And that's why I was so ready to just get to Lincoln. To be there, to say, all right, you know what? We're doing this. I'm at the start line. I'm running. I'm riding. And kind of not have to worry about all the stuff leading up to it anymore. And, man, it was just sweet relief to get to those 2 finish lines and be done.
Yeah. I'm sure it feels absolutely fantastic to be done at that level with it for you. This has been a journey that you've been on. When did you register for the double-double?
I think, the registration opened up for Mid-South and Gravel Worlds probably both back in around October, November. Yeah. I mean, I'd known about it since early October and knew I was going to try to be doing it. I think that's when they announced it was early October. And so it was just up to Randy the randomizer and Gravel Worlds to be able to get into both of those 2 events. And I was able to get gladly into both of those 2 events and take it on.
So overall, about 10 months you've spent thinking about training for, and it's finished.
It's finished. It's done. Never again either.
Fair enough. Well, to all of our followers out there, I think it's worth noting here at the beginning of the episode that Neil and I both finished our events. I finished the 153 miles on single speed on Saturday. But literally we said congratulations at the finish line. We shared about 8 text messages over the weekend. A couple yesterday that's like, hey man, drive safe, get home, we're tired. And hey, we're going to film at 1:30 today in the studio. And that's about the most we've talked about our weekend. We talked about the run some Friday night, hanging out and that type of thing. But we have not debriefed any really on the race. So how do you want to carry this episode forward, Neil?
Well, we can talk about, obviously, I guess kind of go chronological a little bit. Got there Thursday. Everything was awesome Thursday, too. It was kind of chill still on Thursday, which was nice, at least for myself, heading into the run because, I could just kind of get there, relax, see a couple people, and then really kind of get my mind and everything focused. And so there wasn't as much hoopla. There wasn't all the, pre-rides and, shakeouts. And the expo was there, but it wasn't quite, I'm sure as busy and trafficked as it was on Friday. And so I was just able to kind of relax and get ready. We got out there for the run. And that morning I woke up and I was really cold in my room, which kind of scared me at first because, the temperature we talked about last week, we've been used to riding and myself running in close to 100-degree weather, and I'm like, it better not be this cold outside. And thankfully I got outside and it felt great. You and me talked about that Thursday or Friday morning. The weather was fantastic in the morning.
Weather was fantastic all weekend.
Oh, absolutely. Really, we couldn't have got better weather.
No, not a chance.
No. And so, we got out there for the run. It started off way too fast for me, or at least faster than what I would have wanted to go. But the reality is, I I felt great, and I knew I felt great, and I knew my body was ready. The way that I've been running really over the last 3 or 4 weeks, some of the best running that I've had, honestly, ever, whether going back to my previous double back in 2019 or any running this year. I mean, I was running good. I was running fast. I was running strong. And so got out going, and I was running with Venny for a while, probably the first 3 or 4 miles until she just took off down a hill.
Shout out to Vinny from Cantu Cycling Wheels, her and John.
Yeah, she crushed it. She took off down a hill. She told me that I'm supposed to swim like a fish when I run downhill. I don't know exactly what that means, but she encouraged me to swim like a fish, just let everything kind of flop and go and let momentum take you, and she did that. And Venny was down hills almost half the pace that I was. Okay. And she just took off at some point around mile 4, and that was the last time I saw her. But we were running together for those first few miles, and I was so happy with the pace, and it just stayed around. My pace didn't really start dropping, and I'm like, okay, wow, this is going a lot better than I anticipated. And I'm like, but I kept telling myself, surely there's going to be a time where it's really going to slow down, where I'm going to have to start walking hills. I mean, in both of the previous 50Ks I've done, I've had to start walking hills mile 10, mile 12.
Okay.
I did not walk until we were at flat sections this time around. I was actually able to run everything through the hills until we got to that flat section that everybody comes back in. If you did any of the events, I'm pretty sure. I don't know about the 75, but I know the 50K ride. I know the 150-mile bike ride. I assume that the 75-mile bike ride probably came in through that too as well, where you come through Raymond. It's a flat section that leads down towards town before you have those couple little punchy climbs. I didn't actually walk anything until I had crossed over a marathon distance. And then I just decided to catch my breath a little bit and walk. Could I have kept maybe hobbling along at a 13-minute mile pace or 14-minute mile pace? Yeah. Possibly, but at that point I was really trying to determine what was the best option. My arch in my right foot was starting to hurt a little bit at that point, but honestly, man, I can't tell you how shocked I am at how well it went, especially not just considering where Mid-South was at, but where I was personally at 4 months ago. Mm-hmm. I never would have anticipated to be able to handle this as well as it went.
Spoiler alert, for me on Saturday on the bike, I didn't walk any hills till I was past marathon distance as well.
And we are all so proud of you, Matt.
Yeah, right. Thanks. Well, congratulations on the finish there. I know you felt really great after it. It was one of those, you checked that box off, then it was time to start thinking about the run.
Yeah.
Or the ride.
The ride, yeah. I don't want to think about the run anymore at that point. But, it did. It went surprisingly well. Again, I had a couple goals, and my far-out goal that I really didn't talk much about was finishing under 6 hours. And if you would have gone at actual 50K distance, I would have been close. 6 hours and 2 minutes, which I probably would have found a way to push to get those 2 minutes at that point. But with that extra 0.7 mile, it was pretty tough to get there. So it is what it is. Don't really, again, that's for the next 50K, I guess.
The next 50K?
I didn't say double. I said next 50K.
Okay,
let's be very clear about that. But again, I felt so good crossing the line. I mean, you met me there and got a little bit of hydration, got some food, sat down a little bit on a curb, waited around for some friends. But I didn't feel this necessity to have to get out right away and, go and clean up and start the recovery as far as a lot of the other things that I did later in the day, because I just felt fantastic. I felt like, honestly, I could jump on the bike at that point and just take off and go. Treat it like a triathlon. Almost.
Did you feel better at that moment than you feel right now?
Yeah, probably. The pain is real a few days afterwards. It's amazing how getting up and sitting down are tough, how the body is like, you just put me through a really rough few days, and now I'm going to put you through a really rough couple days, and so my body is not reacting great here a few days after, but that's okay. Some of the things that I was having problems with, I have fixed. Like the arch in my foot was killing me Saturday, which is great. Not a big deal. Didn't need it for riding a bike, but as soon as I was done, walking around anywhere was painful. Yesterday, walking around was painful. When we got back in town and I was able to get a little roller ball to do some therapy on it, and it really helped. And but I felt so good afterwards, and I was just hoping that it would stay that way. Leading into Saturday.
Fair enough. Well, congrats on getting the finish there, and I guess that turns the page into Saturday for us.
Yes, us, keyword there.
Us,
yes. So, Matt, I'm going to ask you, hold on, I'm going to take my sip of water here first. I'm going to ask you, all right, so you're lining up there, 150 miles, single speed. What were you thinking as we were about to roll out that morning?
Why is it 153 miles? No, in all honesty, that morning, it was very similar to Friday morning, the weather.
Yeah.
It was almost perfect conditions out there. A little cool, maybe on the hands while they're on the handlebars on the rollout, but just a touch. Not uncomfortable by any means, but standing out there at the start line, it was just kind of confusing almost. Just in my own mental headspace, not the event itself, but you're trying to figure out. They've kind of got the time zones of where do you think you're going to be finishing, and I'm just looking for the spot that I hope to finish. I don't know what time, but getting all that sorted out in the head, hoping you have enough to get to the first checkpoint, which is at mile 33, I think, on the day up there. Mid-South was crewing it. What does it take to get there? What's it going to be like? For any of you that have rode single speed, it's even hard to ride single speed sometimes on group rides with people because you have to go your own pace. On like my geared bike, when I jump on the loft or the Fargo, you can shift down, you can shift up, you can find whatever works with your cadence. On the single speed, you just got to find a lane and go. And so that was probably the hardest part for me then rolling out at the beginning of the day was, as much as I said I wasn't going to do it, Neil and I are going to stick together. We get, what were we even 3 miles out?
No, so about mile 3 or so was probably where it was at.
I looked at him, and I remember looking back, and there was a line ahead of me, and there was a group up, and I'm like, I got to go on these hills.
And I understood. I mean, again, folks may or may not know. I mean, I've rode the single speed up there twice. I rode 2017, 2018 on my single speed, so I understand that completely. When early in the day, when you're feeling good, those hills are there, and you can just take off up them, and go. And so I was like, and honestly, when you did that, my whole mental space was, I'll catch him in about a mile or two. Like, my legs are just still waking up, but my legs felt so good, that morning, honestly. And so I was like, I'll catch up to him. And I never really, I felt like you were right up there, but I could never really spot you. And so I was shocked when I pulled in there at the Mid-South Oasis there at mile 33 or whatever to see you.
So that was kind of my thing, though, that first, and we regrouped there at mile 33, and we were within a minute or 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I think I'd had time to get off my bike, fill my 2 bottles there, and then I turned around, and there's Neil and Andrew Kraft there.
Yeah.
So, again, we weren't far apart, but I'll tell you that first 20 miles, I'm looking at the elevation chart in my mind as I'm thinking about this, going, man, I hope I'm right that all the hills are at the beginning of this day. Because they
totally were, Matt.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, they weren't. They just kept coming all day. I don't know that there was a hilly section as much as the whole thing was a hilly section.
There's not many breaks on that course.
No.
It was pretty rough, but you mentioned me rolling in with Andrew. That was nice on my side because I knew you were going to take off and go, and then the thing is I felt better than some of my friends, Mindy and Mary Beth, who had been doing the double with, and we kind of kept talking how we were always going to stick together, and then it seemed like we always ended up getting separated from one another at some point, whether it was during the run or during the rides.
Yeah.
And I think in total we probably spent the first half a mile of the run together and about the first mile or so, mile and a half maybe of the bike ride together, and that was about it here. And then Mary Beth caught up to me on the run around mile 21, and we ran for a few miles till she just took off and left me. But you just, the thing is you kind of have to ride your own thing. Well, Andrew just he's like, you know what? He's like, I like your pace. We're just going to ride together. And so it was nice riding together with him, knowing him, having good conversation really for those first 33 miles. And then he got he took a little bit extra time there at that checkpoint, cut right back up to us, not too long down the road. Because you and me at mile 33 were like, okay, hey, we're here. Let's ride together. Let's go.
Yeah. So it worked out well there. Overall, I guess we'll break it down maybe checkpoint by checkpoint.
Yeah.
So that gets us to mile 33. Felt pretty good. Great aid stations as usual there.
Oh, yeah.
Great energy with Bobby Wintle and the crew at that first one at mile 33.
And so quick in and out, too. I mean, I felt like when I rolled in there, at that point, it was just top off a bottle.
Yeah.
I'm like, I need to wash off the lid because it was kind of gross, and I want to top it off. And, I mean, I rolled my bike straight to the thing. There wasn't any big lines. There wasn't any I had to hesitate and wait. And, I mean, this is early when everybody's still bunched together, and that can be problematic. There was no problems. I got what I needed. I got what I needed fast. It was fantastic. And, I mean, in and out of there probably 60 seconds.
Yeah, very quick. I will say I made a mistake, though, at that checkpoint. That's where I made my nutrition mistake of the day.
Yeah.
At least my first nutrition mistake of the day. So I'd been rocking the 32-ounce bottles. You've seen them on the show here before. Full of Tailwind. 4 scoops in each bottle. Well, I was through a bottle and a half at the first checkpoint. One of those bottles was the matcha tea. The other one was lemon. Well, I'd been through my tea. I started with the caffeinated one first thing in the morning and half through the lemon. So I thought I topped up my lemon with just water there, and it's going to be half diluted. I'll start on that one. So I thought I was drinking that, when in reality, I'd mixed another 4 scoops of tea in with that half bottle of lemon.
Arnold Palmer, baby.
Yeah, and it was the most disgusting Arnold Palmer I've ever had in my life. And I'm rolling the back half of that section because, of course, I drank the bottle of water first.
Yeah.
I didn't realize this was all, like, stewing away in that bottle, waiting for me to get farther down the road here to the next checkpoint. But I drank it. I downed it. I got my calories from it. But that kind of turned my stomach off for a little bit.
And it's tough, too. Just I've done that before where I've put mix into a bottle that already has mix in it, and that heavy concentration can be sometimes a little rough.
Yeah.
And without water to kind of balance it, which if you've already drank your water, I've been there, done that.
So, yeah, other than that, though, that next section, I think I've got to look at my map here, the route, just to help jog my memory of it. Then we head towards the farm.
Yeah, I was going to say, we wiggled a little bit west and north, but then it was down south. We went through, Loma, I want to say?
Loma,
and then Valparaiso. Yeah.
We didn't need to stop in any of those places.
No.
Loma's a pretty cool, got to have some history there, at least those old buildings.
Oh, yeah.
Up there on top of the world, it felt like, on top of that hill. Some pretty fast descents there after Loma.
Oh, yeah.
Coming down through there. But Valparaiso came through it. Then that climb out of Valparaiso. And when we were coming through Valparaiso, it was when the 75 milers were hitting Valparaiso.
Yeah, the leaders were coming through.
So it was this 2-directional traffic on the way into town.
And we're crawling up this hill slow, it seemed like, and they're descending at a pretty rapid pace.
Ashton Lambie yelled at us, gave us a heads up that there's a big group coming.
Thank you, Ashton.
Yeah.
We needed that.
And that was at mile 48 for us of the day. So overall, still felt pretty good.
Yeah, and as we turned, like you say, as we turned towards the farm, which was the official first checkpoint, I guess you could say, or one with that timing strip at it. I mean, we were all still feeling pretty good. I know you had a couple issues that you talked about with the nutrition and everything, but honestly, I think we all were kind of in the mindset of, again, get in, get out type thing.
Yeah.
Relatively quickly. Andrew was still with us at that point. He'd caught back up, like I said, was riding with us. He got in and out of there pretty quick at that point. And really, we didn't take, I would say, very long at all. Again, it was topping off the bottles. And
maybe 2 minutes max.
Yeah, topping off the bottles and getting back going. I started rolling out just to kind of get through the farm section where that's cutting there, because I wanted to just get through that section. Since I had ran it yesterday, I knew kind of how bumpy it could be, and I was like, I'm just going to roll up and wait for Matt on the gravel, and boom, you were there pretty fast. So
yeah, you slow rolled out. I caught up pretty quickly there. Felt pretty good at that checkpoint. I will say I did make a mistake there in hindsight.
Okay.
I think I should not have been as big a hurry to get out of that checkpoint, because they had all sorts of food and whatnot there. And one thing I've learned about myself on these 100-mile rides, like the one we did with all the Casey stops a couple weeks ago, and this is, I need substance in me, I think. Mm-hmm. I think the Tailwind provides enough nutrition. I just can't have all that that nutrition on an empty stomach.
I see. That's where every rider differs.
Yeah.
And
you and me are complete opposites on that.
Because I think I had a total of 11 minutes like stop time or something, like maybe even less than that. I mean, it's in and out. It's fill up water bottles. It's dump in Tailwind and it's go.
Yeah.
And that's what I did throughout the day. It was not. I I can't eat food. I mean, when we ate at Casey's on our 100-mile ride a few weeks ago, it did not go well for me. I was the complete opposite, whereas trying to put food in my stomach that day made me sick. It did not go well, and still had a great ride. I mean, still finished that 100-miler, but
and to be clear, if you look at like our Athlinks page and whatnot with it, like our numbers are very similar. Yeah. The biggest thing at the difference at the finish line was that stop time.
Oh, yeah.
I think you said you had 11 minutes of stopped or something all day?
Yeah, something
and I'm at like 50 minutes of stopped. Well, the problem for me is leaving the farm. We weren't 2 miles out of it, really, and I just absolutely started to bonk on the day.
Yeah.
It was one of those, I could tell Neil was feeling really, really good as well. And just, again, being geared, single speed, we just could not work together.
It was tough at that point. I mean, we were both kind of spinning at different rates, and the hills, I think, were starting to hit you on the single speed differently, which, again, I know that feeling because about mile 65 is where hills started to hit me differently in 2017 and 2018. Yeah. Now, I was still able to get up them, but it wasn't with the same kind of punch that it was in the first, 65 miles in those years. But I still got up them, and you still got up them.
Yeah.
It just had to happen at a different rate, whereas I could crank down, into a lower gearing and just kind of muscle up them, if you will.
Yeah, I'm looking at the map here, and I think mile 68's really about where I really felt it. Where we made the turn back north, we had a little bit of a headwind.
Yeah.
Really feeling it. That's where I think we really started to separate there. And I know we caught back up once or twice, and that's when I said go. Yeah. Basically, it might not have been that nice, but
no, you were very clear. You're like, hey, dude, you just need to ride your ride. You're feeling good. I mean, you were very. It wasn't a rough thing, I wouldn't say. I mean, you were you rolled up to me, and because we had separated just a little bit, and I kind of slow pedaled. I think after a turn that we headed back west, and you got up to me, and you're like, dude, just go. You're feeling good. You're feeling really good. And you weren't at that point. And
I was
not. And I think you were right. You needed something, and you told me after. I mean, that is one thing you did tell me afterwards was you got a peanut butter and jelly at an Oasis probably about 5-10 miles after there, and that really helped you out. But that 5-10 miles was probably what put a lot of separation in the day ultimately, even between the two of us.
Yeah. Well, that's, it was probably right there about mile 72. We had that conversation of just go for it, ride your own race. And I got this great long lecture from Neil for a second about there's no one to call, Matt. You're going to finish this thing.
I was very clear about that.
There is nobody to come pick you up, so don't even think about stopping. And I'm like, well, I'm already halfway. Oh, wait, I'm not halfway yet. This is a long day ahead of us.
Yeah, I wanted to be clear about that. I mean, it's like, okay, our wives aren't here in town, Matt. You can't call them. My wife is still, I mean, at that point, she was like, I think in Topeka shopping. I mean, so she wasn't anywhere close around. Your wife wasn't up here. I'm not going to be able to come pick you up. No one's getting you. You have to ride your bike.
I'm like, what friends do I have in Lincoln? And I'm like, oh, Jason Stroman. He's probably busy.
little
Corey
tired,
Godfrey. Yeah. He's probably busy. Oh, what about Vinny? Oh, she's on her bike.
Yeah.
So there was nobody. I'm like, I do have Uber on my phone though.
But again, it was more or less just saying that so that you would get that out of your minds, more than anything else, because you were. Yeah. I could see in your eyes, I could see in your face, you were suffering.
That was my first real dark place, and probably my most dark place of the day. Yeah. And then after that, there was a checkpoint at the halfway spot at mile 75. Like Neil said, I stopped there. I think it was the Champion Systems one. I think it was a disco party.
I rolled right past it. I was still.
And you were still in sight of me when I.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we were within the same mile section, and I saw you go on. So,
I felt so good at that point.
And I knew you were feeling good, and so that's when I pulled in there though, and I was just gonna top off with bottles, maybe get some cold fluid in me. See what was going on, and quite frankly, at that point, I didn't know what the rest of the day was going to look like.
Yeah,
like I wasn't sure if that's when you turn and start riding back into Lincoln, or continue on the route. Yeah. But they had some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, some chips. I think I just had the sandwich and loaded up with cold water. Stood there for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. It was my longest stop of the day. But like I said, my headspace was not great.
Yeah.
At that point. And then jumped back on the bike, caught someone else. We were talking for a little bit. And it's funny how you leapfrog with a lot of the same people all day out there. You find people that are running similar paces with you. And so you end up, I still don't know a lot of these people's names, but we talked all day out there.
Well, it's crazy because there's a lot of people, I leapfrogged all day too. The writer from Kansas City, Tina, works at a bike shop up there and leapfrogged all day long and never really said much of anything until we were probably about Malcolm area to one another and like, are you all right? Yeah. Are you all right? Yeah. Yeah. We just suffered through it. We rode together probably until about back to the farm. But, as I said, we went past the disco one. I was so I had 2 bottles on my bike, just like you. The 2 bottles, large 32 ounces. I'd only had 1 done when I got to the Mid-South Oasis. I only had 1 done when I got to the farm. At that point, I rolled up to mile 90. There was just kind of a water fill up right on the side of the road at the top of a hill, and rolled up there. And Andrew Kraft
I think it's a
there.
Winery up there.
Yeah, and I said, you know what? I knew that our buddy Doug from Gooder was up the road 9 miles. I didn't know if he'd have water or what he'd have there. I know he talked about having Coke. So I said, you know what? I know there's water here. I'm putting water in my bottle. I'm going to just get some here and go. Turns out that's where Andrew was at. Andrew Kraft, I caught back up with him at that point at mile 90. And, dude, me and him left out of there, and we left out of there like we had afterburners on. Now, granted, we had the wind at our back, and there were some downhill sections. But, I looked down a couple times, and we were going anywhere between like 20 to 28 miles. Like we were just flying through there, really boogie. And it was kind of like I got rejuvenated seeing him. He had a little bit of energy, I think maybe 2 from just seeing me and riding back together again. And so me and him rode to Gooder. I just wanted to stop when we got there and say hi to Doug because I told him I would. It stunk that he was at the bottom of a hill.
Oh, yeah, 100% on that one.
I was like, man, what? Come on, at the bottom of a hill? No.
And it was at the bottom of a long climb, timed segment hill. But, yeah, I will say that section there, mile 77. So I had my peanut butter and jelly sandwich at 75. 77, we came around kind of the horseshoe at the top, farthest northwest corner of this route. And had a tailwind,
and it was so glorious.
And we had
good.
And we had a tailwind for 20 miles.
Yeah, we down to basically where the Randy Gibson Climber Jersey segment was at,
and that's I felt fantastic there. You would have thought I was a whole new person. I don't know if it was the timing of getting food in me and a tailwind, because I believe that section up there around Garland is what they call like the Bohemian Alps area, and there were some real climbs on that section. Yeah. But it just felt great.
No, everything moved well. My average speed had actually climbed quite significantly. And again, I expected it to. I expected going south was going to really improve things, but also I know later in the day, who knows what's going to happen. But man, it went so well. And like I said, me and Andrew together were there at Gooder, and after we left Gooder, because we're at the bottom of the hill, I just jumped on the bike, and actually that was one of the few times in the entire day that I jumped out of the saddle and to climb because I just needed to get up that hill. And I turned around and Andrew was gone. That was the last time I saw Andrew that day. I wasn't trying to leave him. I got out of the saddle to get up the hill and go. And before I looked, like a couple miles down the road, and I'm like,
where was that at?
Not right at mile 100.
Okay,
roughly
yep.
Where Gooder was at.
Yeah, because there were real climbs getting over to where that water oasis was after Gooder.
Yeah, after Gooder, I rode actually all the way. I didn't get anything at Gooder. I just stopped and said hi to Doug and got a little bit cold water squeezed down my back. But I actually I was doing the math and looking at it, and I had plenty of stuff to get myself actually all the way to the farm again, which was at mile 128, before I needed to do anything. And I was very thankful at that point, by the way, for the little sheet that you had made with the distances in notes
for me.
because I did reference that to see exactly how far the farm was and do the math, and I said, okay, it's mile 128, and here I am. I just turned north at 105. I got 23 miles to go to get there. I got plenty of fluids to get me there, and I kept riding.
I'm very glad I made that document, because for me it was very much, and we talked about it on the show last week, having a sheet here, and it very much became one of those things of, I know I'm at mile 99. I've got to make it to 110 to the next stop or whatever it was. That type of thing. And for me, I got in some very dark head spaces out there on the single speed and climbing that, I just needed that. And actually, when we talk about that fast section there, I did, coming out of Garland, was where I had my only mechanical of the day. And I don't even think I told
I have
you
no
this.
idea. That's what I'm like, what?
Right there about mile 83, flying down some hills. And it was very minor in the scheme of things. I'm glad I caught it as soon as I did. But I think my shoelace came up and caught my frame pump.
Ooh.
And twisted it there, and it got in the rear tire. So it had been rubbing up against it when I finally went, what is that sound I'm hearing, on these big descents, well, the thing is it got so hot, that friction, I couldn't grab my frame pump. It was so hot, but got stopped there, got it adjusted pretty quickly, and luckily I caught it before it rubbed all the way through the sidewall. But you can see a groove in the sidewall of my tire on the rear. But, I mean, that's the type of thing that could ruin a day.
Oh, especially in those sections where you're again, a little more speed in those downhills.
Or Lord forbid it come all the way out of the clip. And luckily it's got the safety strap that kept it on there. Because, I mean, if it would have gone into the spokes or something like that, the day would have been done.
Oof. Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, did not know about that, man.
So, anyways, that was about mile 83, 85 for me. And, yeah, that was my only mechanical of the day on the bike. Absolutely everything worked perfect for me on my bike.
Which is good. Very good. Ooh.
I will say, at the climbing section, I was not the slowest, but I wasn't far from it.
I haven't looked at the speed overall of the climbing section where I came at. I'm not really concerned about it. I told Andrew when we rolled up to it, I'm like, if you want to go for the climbing section and you want to do something fun here, have at it.
Do you want to know what your time was?
I'm not doing it. Sure, man.
I've got it pulled up right here.
Go ahead. Tell me.
Your time was 9 minutes, 54 seconds.
Which put me not in last place, obviously.
Do you want to know what place?
Sure.
Overall, 322nd out of 422.
Nice. Not last place.
Yeah.
It's a lower place, though, than where I finished in the race.
Would you like to know about mine?
Yes.
11 minutes, 21 seconds. 389th out of 422.
Hey, you did it. You did it. You were not in last place on that.
And again, this is mile 100 out there, and didn't have to walk any of it.
Good.
Did not walk any hills yet in the day.
Nice. Yet.
In the day.
Gotcha. So, mile 105, that's the mile we all probably know, or at least most of us felt, because we turned back north at that point, and then the wind all of a sudden was a lot worse than the beginning of the day, the wind coming out of the north, and I'll tell you...
105 to Malcolm sucked.
105 to the... Well, yeah, 105 to Malcolm really was worse than to the farm. The farm actually wasn't that bad, but to Malcolm, that was rough. I could not get anything going. Those roads were rough.
Mm-hmm.
There was really nothing about those roads that seemed to be friendly. And yes, in retrospect, it was really just the 105 to 118 that was so brutal.
It was late in the day. It wasn't pretty. There wasn't anything to see on this section.
At that point, I texted Brandy and said I'd be done between 5:30 and 6:30 is what I thought. I did finish before 6:30, but barely.
Yeah.
And it was because I hadn't rode through that section yet. Because that section...
It took all flipping day.
That 13 miles between 105 to Malcolm at 118 took me... I would say this is just guessing. I haven't actually looked at the numbers, but knowing my speed going through there, I would say that it probably took me about an hour and 20 minutes to just go through those 13 miles, if not more. I mean, it was so...
How long do you think?
About an hour and 20 minutes. Yeah. If I was going about 10 miles an hour, maybe even less.
It felt like it took me forever.
I would think that's where it about was at. I mean, it was a very slow drag. I mean, I stayed on the bike. I didn't get off. I kept pedaling. But there were many times I looked down and saw 8, 9, 10 miles an hour. Numbers that really I hadn't seen all day unless I was, getting towards the top of a climb. And so it was like, ooh, this is not fun at all. And it was really starting to play with my mental game a little bit at that point, too, because I had felt so good up to that point. I felt so fantastic till when we turned at mile 105 that then it started playing mentally with me. And I'm like, man, I want to finish by this time. And that was also the time, too, where I was checking in on you. I checked and sent you a message, hey, where are you at? And you told me you were at an Oasis. And I checked on my buddy Rusty to see where he was at. And he was at one of the Oases as well. And kind of, just sending out some text messages, seeing where people were at, and kind of doing some updates.
I'm looking at my GPS data right here on my computer, and I think that section at least took me an hour and a half.
Yeah, I'm just guessing based upon just...
That was also the hottest part of the day.
don't doubt it. I mean, it seemed
middle of
like
the afternoon. So.
Yeah, I would guess, like I say, I'm not for sure, but if I just had to think about how long, I would say it was 13 miles took probably, like I say, an hour and 20 minutes. And I was glad, though, to get past Malcolm because I knew a lot of what was after Malcolm ultimately, either from previous events or from the 50K. And so I was really thankful to be past Malcolm at that point.
Did it get easier for you after Malcolm?
So going to the farm was very easy. So getting those miles, the next 10 miles to get to the farm was fantastic. And I was so thankful for those 10 miles to come and go. When I got to the farm at that point, totally different than it was earlier in the day. There was maybe 10 of us there. Because you don't have all 3 events coming through at one time. It's just us that are on the 150, and actually some of the long voyage folks were also coming through with us at that point. And I knew some of those roads out because we ran them the previous day, but then the northern section, the most northern section out of the farm, I did not know that, the northeast portion. So there was about 10 miles up there that were relatively new to me. And the climbs, again, were just, they were long at that point of the day. But as soon as I was counting down the miles left that we had to go north, and out of the farm, it was like 4.5 miles left to go north. And I was like, just get through these 4.5 miles, and then it's either east and west with crosswinds, or you're going to hit that south section and just boogie. And that's, I just kept kind of counting the miles. I actually had, instead of looking at my numbers, I was looking really at just how much distance till the next turn on my GPS unit to kind of guide me, because I just wanted to get past every turn that I needed to get past so that I could start heading south and really take off and go.
Did you stop at the Malcolm store?
No.
Okay.
No, rode right through Malcolm.
I leaned over for a second in the intersection and thought about going in just for old time's sake. It's part of the Gravel World's journey type thing. But I actually got lucky. I don't know if they were out there when you were there, but some were just past the ball fields. There were families selling food and stuff out there.
Yeah.
But you make the turn there, climb back up a hill.
The lady there with the truck?
Yeah, there with the truck, filling water bottles, handing out ice. And
I really thought about stopping, but I was in this mental, I need to get to the farm.
Neil, she said free beer.
She didn't say that to me. She said ice, water, and Gatorade. And I'm like, that sounds amazing. And actually, as I passed her, I was probably about 500 feet past her, and I almost stopped and turned around. I said, "No, you're not doing an extra 500 feet." Like that was where I was at mentally. It was just forward movement.
Absolutely an amazing trail angel there, topped off. Actually, ice in the bottle for like the first time since I left that morning, and that gave me enough water to get to the farm. No questions asked for me. I did stop at the Water Oasis again a long time there at like mile 104 place because it's the place with the famous homemade pickles. And I had to have a pickle because the thing is I've heard about these pickles for years covering it, but I never ever got one for Gravel Guru because I always wanted to make sure there were pickles for the athletes coming through. So I earned that pickle.
So now you're the athlete.
Yeah, so I had that pickle. But stopped through there. Anyways, made it through Malcolm. Very similar. Got up to the farm. That was pretty easy. I felt like there's some pretty solid descents on the way to the farm.
Yeah, there were some really nice descents until that road right where you climb to the farm where we came down and start,
Yeah, that one was rough.
Other than that,
there were worse places.
Like I said, between Malcolm and the farm was fantastic.
That next 5 miles out of the farm was rough.
Yeah.
So,
like I said, getting finished with those north miles, that's what it was.
Because I will say this much. I will say this much. Leaving the farms, the farm was at mile 128. I did not walk any hills on Saturday until mile 130.
It's about what usually I think when in 2017, I think I walked a couple hills, and that's about when it started in 2017.
I see with the GPSs on the bike, I made the rule for myself that if I can keep the bike moving uphill at 4 mile an hour or over, I'm good to go. Keep pedaling. If I'm struggling to do 4 mile an hour, get off the bike and walk it. Because I understand the time.
Yeah.
That basically I can walk about 3.5 mile an hour with the bikes. So it's one of those ones. If you can walk faster than ride and put out less energy, you do that.
And that's exactly how I've done it single speed. I mean, literally that same number, 4 miles an hour is where it is.
And I hit one hill there. And it was sandy. I don't know. I lost my groove, and I said some not very nice things, I'm pretty sure.
Stupid pea gravel, sand.
And walked up it. And it was one of those times where it felt like a lot of those hills where, like, you come up the top, you descend a tiny bit, and then there's another one right here.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, if I got up to the base of that first one, I could jump on and finish the second one on the bike. But just that little bit of a reprieve of getting off the bike, walking for maybe a minute or two. I was never off the bike that long. I think I walked 3 hills, maybe 4 hills between there, mainly trying to get up to mile 134. That was where we turned onto the dirt road that's cut in and headed back east towards Lincoln.
Yep.
And that, I know I climbed once or pushed my bike up the hill once there because it got hot and ugly. There was no wind. We went from
no wind
to, oh my gosh, it is suffocating hot in here.
I know the exact section you're talking about. So it was right when you got off of that dirt road that was cut in, and there was no airflow. And all of a sudden I'm sitting there, I'm like, I can't breathe. I feel like I got 100 degrees hotter than what it has been. And all of a sudden I was like, if this is how it's going to feel going south or going in a crosswind, I want to go north some more. Like, that's where I was at. Now, as soon as I get past that cutout section, I was fine. But, man, it kind of freaked me out for a few minutes there. It was that was a scary few.
Yeah, there at mile 134 was rough.
Yeah.
It got hot, but it felt good to be out of the headwind there for a little bit. But the hills did not stop. Like, you're like, at some point, we got to get to the flat section of Lincoln, right?
Correct. And again, I knew the math. And so that's to me, to keep my brain moving, I either sing songs that I make up on the bike or I do math. And so I did math, knowing exactly where we started to head south. There was a 2-mile section that we ran through. We take a right, and it's downhill, and then you take a left turn, and it's flat almost the entire rest of the way.
I was really grumpy from, like, this dirt road section in. Because I don't know how many times, like, I got a good run at a downhill. This feels great. Then the GPS beeps. 300 feet, turn left. I'm looking down a hill, down a gorgeous gravel road in a descent, headed south towards Lincoln. Why do I need to turn here, Neil? Why?
Because there's a route, Matt, and that's how you have to do events. With the route that is predetermined. I know. And
there's one point I'm like, did they pay Craig a bonus for every hill and turn he got on this route? Like, is that how, like, it's incentivized for them? So, yeah. Anyways, made it into, I believe, what was that town? Raymond?
Raymond, yeah.
And it's smooth sailing, super smooth hero gravel dirt. From there in, there's one climb.
Yeah, there's right there at the end when you turn back east before you get onto, like, the dirt little connector to the pavement. There's a little bit of climb, but it was so nice to be in that tailwind. I was going so fast. I told you about it. I boogieing along, and a bee actually flew in my jersey, bee or wasp, something, and I don't know, my arm it was all in one thing. It hit my chest, I literally tried to almost, like, grab it, I think, but I just grabbed the zipper, pulled my zipper down, and thankfully it flew right back out before stinging me. But I stopped there really quick in Raymond to zip the jersey back up because I didn't want to blind anybody with the pastiness that would be coming across the finish line shortly thereafter. But, man, it was smooth sailing. It was fast through there. That little section of climbing was a little slow, but once I hit pavement, man, it was home free, and it was done. It was done.
It felt really good to hit that section of pavement. That might have been my fastest in, like, the last 4 hours.
Yeah,
was when I hit that pavement where you came down off the curb, into the Fallbrook neighborhood. And
I will say this: in years past, last year, for instance, they had that same section. You came off the curb. I rode my bike off the curb last year. This year, my backside would not have allowed me to ride my bike off the curb, so I did stop and step off. There were areas on me that were more painful than I've ever had them be before, and one of them was my backside. It felt like it had a cheese grater taken over. And
fair enough.
Yeah, so I jumped off the curb the old-fashioned way, just stepping off. Yeah, good job for you. You're in your 20s still.
Yeah, well, I didn't realize on the single speed how much time of the day I'd spend standing up.
Yeah, you don't spend as much time in your saddle, and so you probably aren't quite as sore or tender down there. And, man, I was...
yeah, but anyways, we came across the finish line. There was that. I will say I did not stick around very long. afterwards?
I stuck around almost until 9 o'clock. So
Did you?
I got done. I didn't know how close people were to behind, and so we jumped in to Shilling Bridge and grabbed a quick bite, which honestly didn't sit well in my stomach at that point. I probably either should have waited to eat or just not ate at all because I was not feeling it. And I ended up seeing Doug from Gooder out there at the finish line, and I just wanted to see him after I finished, and also to say bye because I probably wouldn't have seen him, again after that. So I went out and said bye to him and hi to him, and right about that same time, Andrew Kraft had just finished. So then I, ran over to Andrew and said hey to him, and it seemed like after that point, I kept seeing people come and went and grabbed the car because it had to park about probably a mile or so away, I think was where my parking lot D was at. And so Brandy took me over to get that and brought it a little bit closer to get the bike back in the car and get things set up. And it wasn't too long after that, then you finished. And so I got to see you finish, and then waited for Mindy and Mary Beth to finish, and then my buddy Rusty from Chicago area finished. And so
I'll say when I came in, the awards were going on, and I walked through there a couple times, meandered quickly, but I will say this, and I think this is accurate now that we're 36 hours about out of finishing this event, maybe a little bit more than that now. That is by far the hardest thing I've ever done on a bike. Like, my body was done. It wanted food, but didn't at the same time.
And I don't think that's even that's not an overstatement, Matt. I mean, the reality is this 153, first of all, it is your longest because it's longer than what you did the day that we that you rode 150 and I rode 115, and then you finish it up, whatever. But it was longer than that day. It was a whole heck of a lot hillier than that day.
It was windier.
And you had a whole lot less gears than you had that day. And yes, there was wind too, and there was a whole lot of other things into that. But I will say that that's exactly how I felt when first year I ever did Gravel Worlds in 2017 on a single speed. I mean, I got done, and I walked into the hotel room, and I literally and we were staying in like a roach motel. I mean, it was a nasty place. And I fell on the ground and just sat there and could not move.
Yeah.
I was trashed. And I'd never felt worse the day after an event than I felt that day too. I couldn't move. Nothing wanted to function in my body. I mean, I tore myself up, it seemed like, up there. So I when you sent me that text, I think it was yesterday morning, like, dude, I've never, or maybe it was Saturday night. I'm like, I understand exactly what you're saying, because that's the truth of Gravel Worlds, man. It's not an easy, Nebraska's not flat. We've said it 100 times before.
Yeah.
Not flat, and that is a tough course.
Yeah, for sure was tough. Glad to get it finished. Glad to check it off the list here. Ultimately, really ready for the fall.
Absolutely. I told a lot of people over the weekend, I said, you'll see me a lot on my single speed and a lot bike packing probably the rest of the way here, at least for a while. That doesn't mean that I won't still try to ride some and ride hard, and maybe I'll even find a fall event or something too, to race. But I'm fully looking forward to kind of changing the pace a little bit here, at least, and bike packing and enjoying my single speed. And
I think it's that annual kind of post-event conversation of, now we can ride because we want to go ride and have fun, not because we have to go get these miles this week.
Yeah.
Type deal of, and that said, I mean, I just completed 150 miles on a single speed. I don't want to lose all this fitness.
Absolutely. No, trust me. That's the conversation I've been having in my head. I was like, dude, I just did this on both events, the run and the ride, faster than I ever anticipated. I mean, I sent you yesterday. I mean, these combined events are 50 miles further than with the combined events back in March at Mid-South. And so extra 50 miles only took me an extra 47 minutes to complete.
Yeah.
I mean, I everything was a lot faster, smoother, better physically for me here in August than it was in March. And I mean, there's a lot of factors I think that go into that, but it also shows me too that my fitness is getting back to where I've wanted it to be. That's what I've been saying for a while, is I want to be back to where I was in 2018. I want to be back to where I was early in 2019. And it seems like it's been a long journey to get there, and I finally feel like I'm getting there. And so, yeah, I want to bike pack and have fun, but I also, too, don't want to sit there and be like, okay, do I need to start this journey again here in another couple of years and try to get back to it? So there's definitely conversations.
With that said, I'm looking forward to maybe some Sunday night single speed rides.
Oh, yeah.
Going out, just having those 15-mile cruises, hitting up all the group rides in town. Yep. And not worrying about, do we need bonus miles afterwards? Because I think that's what maybe a lot of people don't realize is, we do the Monday night or the Thursday night ride, but typically we'd bookend it one way or the other with another 15 or 20 miles, at least in the last month here. And part of that's been because it's been so flipping hot in Kansas this summer. Yeah. That's the other part. I'm ready for the fall, some cooler temperatures, go ride. Because I can 100% say this, had it been the weather that we've had all summer here in Kansas this weekend in Lincoln, Nebraska, I do not think I would have finished.
Would have been a different weekend. I mean, I don't. I honestly don't know where it would have all been total both days together. Mm-hmm. I think the run I think probably would have gone about the same, because even if it had heated up early in the day, I mean, I was done shortly after noon. I mean, it was still early enough in the day. And the thing is, too, they would have also started us at 5 a.m. had that high chance of heat. And starting at 5 a.m., I was outside at 4:15 in the morning. It was fine. It would have been a perfect temperature to run. So I think the run, honestly, would have probably been pretty similar. The bike race would have been a totally different animal, because that heat would have been just brutal. And I don't know 150 miles on the bike that day what it would have felt like if we were talking about 105 heat indexes like we had here a few weeks ago.
I don't know with me on the single speed. I don't give myself much credit for as dark as I got in some spots here.
I think it's one of those things then, what would have happened, just, again, I think we maybe get through it, but I think it's probably we take it at a different pace. We do stop a little longer at the 60-mile checkpoint. We do stop a little bit longer maybe at the Mid-South Oasis. We maybe do stop a little longer, or I stop at like the 75-mile one that you had with the peanut butter and jellies, and we hit those things a little bit more. Again, maybe we don't spend a whole lot of time, but as it is, I stopped at mile 33. I stopped at mile 60, whatever that was. I stopped really quick at 90 for a water bottle, really quick at 99 to say hi to Doug. I mean, it was literally hi, wet, pictures, and go. And then 128, and then the one to get my zipper back up on my jersey. And that, I mean, it was, but again, total, I think, and I don't even know. I was told by Rusty, he's like, dude, you had 11 minutes of stop time. How did you do that? I'm like, I don't like to stop. It's not, and you know that I don't like to stop either. If I stop, a lot of times my body will just shut down, and I like to keep moving. It's not that I'm fast. It's not that I'm trying to be fast. The longer I sit, my body just feels like it's time to take a nap. Whereas if I just keep rolling, I can keep moving more often than not. And so it was my way about going about the day. And again, I can't complain. I'm glad this double thing's over. I'm glad I can say that I've accomplished it. I believe, and I don't have official numbers, but just looking at the list that they put out from after Mid-South, the people that were left around, I think less than 20 of us accomplished all 4 events. How many started? I think at the start, Jason said there was somewhere around 40 people. And the thing is, a lot of people, for different reasons, too. Some folks couldn't make it to Gravel Worlds. You know,
scheduling and
life happens. Things come up, and you just can't make it. Some folks I know dealt with injuries and other things too. But, you know, again, to be one of less than 20 people, or around 20 people probably, that
are that crazy.
They were that crazy and were able to do it. I'm happy to be one of those, and I'm glad, again, it's over. And again, it doesn't mean that I'm not done running. I'm running still. Like I've got bit by the running bug. I've had actually a lot of fun in a lot of my runs here recently, believe it or not. Like even in training runs. I know. But I'm also not going to stop biking, Matt. We can still ride bikes together. We can still have our fun chill rides together. We can still go down to Madison, up to Cottonwood, or to Council Grove. I mean, as long as you don't mind running to those places.
Not going to happen. No, I'm glad you enjoy running. I think it's a great second discipline to have, because we all know that there's times bike riding takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
But to be able to go out and run 2 or 3 miles for you in the morning after dropping the kids off or whatever, I'm glad it's there for you. I'm glad you've come back full circle on the healing to get to where you are with it now. I still think anything over the 10 miles is absolutely crazy on the running side of things.
So you're saying you want to do a 5K with me? 3 miles.
Maybe a 5K. Maybe a 5K. But overall, glad it's through. Ready for some cool fall nights, some fun bike rides.
Yes.
And just truly enjoying the fall. Any final thoughts here?
I had a blast up there. I mean, and again, I want to thank everybody that does watch the show that did come and say hi. I mean, whether it was out at the expo on Thursday, I got to meet a lot of folks, and then on the ride, I got to meet a lot of folks. On the run, it didn't seem like there was a lot of folks that I don't know. We probably don't have a lot of folks watching that do the runs, but I think I've met a couple folks, like I say, that I'd known from other places or maybe had seen around, but I met a lot of people even on the bike ride portion, and so it's always fun to get to do those things, and it was great to be back again at an event like that with the Gravel family.
So. Absolutely great to be back. I want to thank Corey, Craig, Jason, Sophia, all of the Gravel Worlds family up there in Lincoln for putting on a stellar event this year, the Schilling Bridge crew.
And their volunteers too, man. I don't want to forget those folks. I mean, the volunteers, whether it was check-in stuff, which, by the way, Corey was running check-in when I get there on Thursday. I mean, which is just, he's doing the check-in stuff.
He's a Gravel Hall of Famer, too.
Yes. I mean, and he's running that kind of stuff, which is just wild. But the volunteers at the aid stations, both on the run Friday and on Saturday, were just fantastic. And so it really is one of those it takes a village type thing. And they got tons of people out to make every single place that we stopped at smooth, easy. They were kind, they were encouraging, and so it was really awesome.
Fantastic. I know when I came back through the farm, obviously we're separated. Like you said, there was only one or two of us there at the time, and I would not have had to set my bike down if I didn't want to. They were there with cold fluids, food, whatever we needed. Volunteers are absolutely fantastic. Thank you for following along on this journey with us. For everybody watching on Gravel Guru, listening to the audio podcast, make sure you subscribe on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. Follow along and see what we have coming up next. Thanks for watching.